Hello everyone, welcome to the channel, Pinoy Service. I didn't take the money. What is the crime of aiding fraud? Hello, we are the only agent of XX betting in Taiwan. Now we want to ask for a deposit and withdrawal account, and we will give feedback to members. There is a way to enter the account, request, transfer assistant, receive 5,000 per day. Common propaganda like these are very common methods used to defraud others on the internet and in society. Once you fall into this trap and provide an account, you are likely to be sued for aiding fraud. 1. What is the crime of fraud? Article 339 of the criminal law has a clear definition of fraud. And the Supreme Court has also explained that the crime of fraud is the use of telling the victim incorrect information, or concealing important information, causing the victim's cognitive error. And further, the belongings are delivered. This property does not necessarily have to be handed over to you who directly participated in the crime. If the property is handed over to a third party, it is also within the scope of punishment for the crime of fraud. Therefore, if you tell the victim that your child is in my hands, or claim that the prosecutor wants to freeze the account, the victim will fall into a false perception that the child is really kidnapped and the account will be frozen, and hand over the money to a third person. Be charged with fraud. 2. What is an accomplice? Accomplice refer to, although they do not directly participate in any act of crime, but based on the intention of helping others to commit a crime. They use his assisting behavior to make the crime easier or become an integral part of the crime. For example, helping to buy a murderous gun to kill a person, although he did not really participate in the killing. But the act of helping to buy a gun facilitates the murder, and therefore helping to buy a murderous gun will constitute an assistant in the crime of homicide. 3. Why giving an account constitutes an accomplice to fraud? The Civil Justice Reform Foundation made statistics in 2013, and the probability of being guilty of an accomplice in fraud is as high as 97%. That is, as long as the account is delivered to be used by others as a head account, the guilt is basically confirmed. The courts generally believe that, based on the fact that the government spares no effort in propagating fraud cases, people with common sense should be able to detect that the delivery of accounts will lead to headshots, and then help fraudsters to defraud victims. And since the delivery of accounts can be aware of this, but still greedy for petty profits to deliver accounts, it is obvious that their actions will help fraud, foresee, and don't care whether it happens, and use the so-called indirect intention to defraud the accomplices to determine these people's head sin. 4. What kind of criminal responsibility should the accomplice to fraud bear? The law stipulates that fraud accomplices can be sentenced to the same sentence as fraudsters. That is, fixed term imprisonment of less than 5 years. But the sentence can be slightly reduced as appropriate. In practice, after pleading guilty and reaching a settlement, as long as the law allows, most judges will give a suspended sentence and give them a chance to repent. However, if unfortunately no settlement is reached and the court also finds guilty, most of them will still give a sentence of less than 6 months, so that the defendant can pay a fine without going to jail. 5. What kind of civil liability should an accomplice in fraud bear? In fact, whether the responsibility in the criminal law is heavy or not, most of them can be settled by fines, but it is different in civil matters. Most courts believe that since you have helped the fraudster to swindle property, you have to bear joint and several liability with the fraudster. Joint liability means that the victim can demand full compensation from anyone who bears joint and several liability. That is to say, assuming that you are a head account, and 3 million of them are transferred to the fraudster through your account, the victim can ask you or the fraudster for compensation of 3 million yuan. Of course, legally, you can ask the real fraudster to share the money. But in fact, there are very few cases where the mastermind of the fraud can be caught. Or if he is caught, he has already left production, so he can only accept the compensation obediently. Working safely, Pinoy Service, care about you.